Steve, thank you so much for joining me. It's a real privilege, pleasure to have you here. I was reminiscing of when we first met nearly a decade ago at a football club. I was delivering a talk, a personal development session to loads of staff, and you was in the audience. And I remember straight after it, you came over to me. We had a handshake, quick word, and I hope I'm not presuming, but I feel like we've become friends ever since that moment nearly a decade ago. So I just want to take you back to that very moment because you were sat in the audience with lots of football coaches. It was at Millwall Football Club at the time. I think that was your first role in sport, wasn't it, outside of education? Yeah. And you're sat there, you're listening to me. We connect after it, and then the rest is history for you because you've literally just absolutely flown and flourished. It's wonderful to see how far you've come. When you were sat in that room at Millwall, working within a football environment, what was some of the things that you wanted to take from education into football, and what was the reason that you left education and went into the football arena?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me, mate. I'm looking forward to this chat. I call myself a failed footballer on socials because I was. You were better than me because you played for England. I was nowhere near it. But I played at Brighton, so it wasn't that unusual. I was the only footballer in my generation to have any A-levels, crappy ones, but they did enough to scrape me to go uni. So I moved from Brighton to Greenwich, South London. Was a school teacher for 17 years in South London at 4 failing schools, and I pretty much picked up all my school methodology and donked it into pro football, all my leadership stuff. And how did I get into pro football? I've taught 40,000 kids in South London, and an ex-pupil texts me called Chris Efer. He loves me mentioning him because I mention him on all the podcasts I'm on. And he texted me and he said, Sallis, there's a job going at Millwall. Have you seen it? And I lived on the doorstep. I've never supported the club, not in a rude way. I'm a Brighton fan. And then talk about karma. I always talk about spirituality, me and you, don't we? But I'm helping him as an 11-year-old, telling the science teachers to fuck off, which he won't be proud of, but he was. And I was his mentor. And then did I think 20 years later he would change my life? And he did. So, the story, was a full circle, really. So I never thought I'd go back into pro football. I did. And then pretty much, Luke, as I've mentioned in my book, which we'll talk about earlier, I've pretty much picked up all my school strategic stuff and mentioned many times in the difference between education and pro football that, not in a rude way, football hardly has any strategy. It certainly didn't 10 years ago. It's definitely improving. But, yeah, that was really my role there.
So let's rewind the clock then. A kid in Brighton, bottom sets in most classes. Tell me about that. How was that for you?
Oh, I went home to my mum, first day of secondary school, and she said, "You all right, son?" I said, "No, I'm not all right." And she questioned me. She said, "You all right?" I said, "No, I'm not." My bottom lip was going. I said, "Mum, am I thick?" She said, "No, you're not thick." I said, "You sure I'm not thick?" She says, "No, you're not thick. You're my son. I love you." I said, "I've just been put in bottom set at school." And I was just honestly confused. Now, if we go back primary school, I knew I weren't brainy, let me just clarify, but I was definitely not thick. I was just the kid in the middle. So to be labelled day one was hard. Now, any mums out there listening, I was an August birthday, so I didn't really understand it. But, you go to school 11 months later, you're more likely to be behind, aren't you? So, the September following August, I'm on my late August birthday. So that was always my mum's excuse. But generally, I had a average relationship at school. Now I've become an academic, which is just mental. How I've flown the nest, and now learning is everything to me. Learning gives me a choice about how successful I can be, because it is a choice, isn't it? Yeah. So failed my GCSEs and then did retakes, got some crappy A levels, and then went to uni. And the first time I fell in love with learning, Luke, was at uni at 19. So I suppose the messages that me and you relay to these young kids around the country are, as you know, my project's called My Future Self. So will your future self thank you for bouncing back? It probably will.
Incredible that, isn't it, to think that you were labelled at school or put in a group that you felt gave you some kind of label enough to upset you to go home and ask for some clarification from your mum that you're not thick. Isn't that incredible that terminology, bottom set, equals you feeling like that to go home and want some support from your mum to let you know that you're not? What do you think? So just thinking here that terminology, bottom set, how do we get out of that? Because it still happens now, doesn't it? My kids are at school. They come home. Dad, I've been put in such and such a set. How do you think we overcome that labelling of sets?
what don't have sets. Like, great teachers should be able to differentiate to meet the needs of all learners at all times. I think educationalists, notice my sarcasm, they're meant to be the most educated people around education, and they're labelling children. So that's not cool. That's proper 1900 stuff, isn't it? So there'll always be an argument for setting being and adding value, but I don't know, mate. I'm just not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with labels in society. Full stop.
Yeah.
You are this. You are this. I'm just not comfortable with it. I think if we're lifelong learners, all of us, and we coach lifelong learning, we educate on lifelong learning. Carol Dweck stuff. You know, you haven't done it yet, and it means that the process of life means that we're always ongoing and we're always able to improve our lives, right?
So you've clearly got a thirst for learning and developing. How come do you think at school that wasn't there, or was it there that you just weren't shown the way?
Average teachers, if not shit teachers. Miss Lewis changed my life, really. When my mum and dad split up, she was the one that really looked after me. Mr. Hickman, my tutor, someone I remember, strictest man in the world, but fair. Taught me about, he was really, really loyal to me, looked after me in times of need. And you'd think, becoming a PE teacher, you think I would love my PE department, but I didn't really love my PE department. One of my PE teachers was a very autocratic, bit of a bully, really. So again, I think what that taught me was about kindness is kindness. Whoever your favourite subject is, there's still great teachers out there. But generally, I don't know. It's hard to batter the school because the variables were when my mum and dad split up, changed my life in a major way. Dad left home, brother left home, one went to uni at 40. So I pretty much brought myself up from 14. And that was probably why I'm so independent now, mate, I think.
What impact did that have on you then, your parents separating at that age?
Because I didn't see it coming a big way. You know, Dad was still now my best mate, do you know what I mean? And my brothers, like, we were like, three of us are like tight. I was obviously still love my mum and close with my mum. I'm very close to my mum now. But at that time, yeah, you lose your dad, you lose your brother. Mum's not about, she went to uni, and I didn't really go to school, mate. I just turned up late for about 2 years. I used to leave messages on the voice answer phone, and I'll just delete it when I got home because Mum didn't go home till about 7.
Really?
Yeah, just delete, literally, you know, the old tape recorder. You used to just delete all the messages from school all the time. So didn't get found out, and no one really, not in a bad way, it wasn't neglect, but just my dad was doing his own thing, and, you know, I was at work and Mum was at uni. So, yeah, my brother weren't about to keep an eye on me, so I just drifted.
So you was a young aspiring footballer at that age too?
Yeah. I mean, I got lifts from mates, dads, and Dad would always come and watch me still at weekends and that. Obviously, I was at Brighton at the time and, you know, driving around the country playing in games, you know, as you do. But yeah, football really was my main passion. Definitely wasn't education. Like, education was, you know, like at that age, just thirdly. You know, I didn't have any other passions apart from football and tennis really at that age.
So lots of kids that you and I work with go through these challenges, separation, losing people. Do you think that when, you know, on reflection now that we're sat here reminiscing, do you think in that moment when your parents split and you was going through that, pressing delete on the tape recorder and just surviving really and just going from one thing to the next, do you think you knew in that moment the impact it was having on you? Or was you just rolling with whatever it was?
Definitely not. It was only when I hit my 20s when I started having like quite big anxiety. I'm like, what the fuck's that come from? You know what I mean? Like really struggling. I was a school teacher as well. So it's like, where's this delayed reaction come from? So my mum would always call it delayed reaction. She said that was suffered. And then when you're 14 to 19, you don't consciously, like you've just asked me, you don't go, my mum and dad split up. You just get on with it. It just was what it was. And I don't ever remember really feeling lonely but I remember coming home to an empty house every day for 5 years. So most 14-year-olds don't come home to an empty house for 5 years. You know what I mean? It's a long time to come home to your own. And do you know what? I don't think at the time that was anything bad. It just was what it was. But I think that's definitely conditioned me to fucking just getting on with life and cracking on. And, you know, and the final story I want to share is, we'll touch on my motivations later around money and whatever, but my mum came home one night and she absolutely teared my head off for having 2 chicken Kievs. Don't know if I've ever shared this story with you. And she couldn't afford 2 chicken Kievs. She could only afford 1 because I needed it for the next day. So I had chili con carne for 5 days and I had spag bowl for 5 days. So I also fucking hate cooking. Hate it. Because I just hate it. Because I just cooking for me was always this thing that, not in a, sounds really bad, but it's just always something in our generation in the 90s, your mum should do for you. Do you know what I mean? She'd come home and your dinner's there, and it went from that to, I ain't got no dinner, I've got to cook for myself. So, I do remember being anti bloody hell. I'm knackered from school and I've got to cook myself another dinner. That was hard.
And interesting that how you can relate to that. You can see on your face as you're talking about it, it kind of like you relive that emotion, isn't it, that you felt back then. And you're coming home making Kiev's, con carne, bolognese, whatever you're having. And at that moment, what fascinates me is that you don't know you're going through that, do you? Until you sit older. And my question to you is, as skills that you now have, which we'll come on to later, what advice would you give to that youngster that maybe is going through stuff? I was in a school recently, and this really brought home to me how much is happening that we have no idea about. I always just say behind every pair of eyes is a story, and you and I know nothing about until they start to share it. This young kid shared with us in front of a group. It was the 6th week, so I've worked with him for 6 sessions, 1 hour a week for 6 weeks. It was the last one, and he shares, he's now 14 years of age, same age as my son. He's lived in 8 different homes with 8 different families, and he's 14. One of them was a care home. The other 7 was families. And his words were, they weren't all very nice, Luke. And I'm sat opposite this young man, and he's talking about it literally in front of the group. The reason he talks about it is one of the kids in the group said, Luke, I've got a decision to make pretty soon. I said, what's your decision? I said, is it appropriate, and would you like to share? He said, I'd like to. He said, I've got to decide whether or not to see my dad anymore. And that's when the next young guy jumps in and says, I know what that feels like. I had to make that decision with my mum. And then he starts to talk about the 8 different homes. I'm like, he's 14. Imagine being in 8 different families. Now, that kid, he shows no sign in terms of the way he talks about it. He's very black and white with it, very logical. Yet his advice was far superior to what I could give to a young man, because he's been there, he's lived in that position. So for young people like that are going through tough stuff, that are in it, probably don't know the ramifications down the road, what advice or suggestions would you give to them to help them through them periods if they're not consciously aware that they're going through something?
Well, if any parents are watching, I'd get your kids to do gratitude lists every week. I think a lot of my work is very strategic. So instead of like operationally just reacting to shit stuff that happens in your life, I think the strategy stuff's key, and the gratitude links to perspective. So I would educate children on gratitude, perspective, your wealth is your health, very spiritual, that type of work. I think I'm really mindful that reacting to things is the challenge. We've got to be honest with kids, and we've got to tell them the truth. The Chimp Paradox book says, life's not fair, the goalpost moves, there's no guarantees. So that might sound a bit cutthroat, but that's the reality of life. So why are we, putting kids in a bubble, and then when the shit stuff hits them, it's too difficult for them to challenge? So I'll definitely be much more strategic about helping. And I think the next thing, the perspective thing, my mum always said to me, why are you working in those nutty schools in London? I go, Mum, my childhood was about 20 times better than what these kids have got.
Yeah.
So that's giving me my perspective. So that, it goes back in circles a little bit. I wouldn't have known that because I wouldn't have lived that teacher life then. But educating your kids, and, your kids whinging and moaning about not having this and not having that, like welcome to the real world. Welcome to being stoic. Welcome to, there's a lot of instant now in society. Only social media can verify and validate that. But yeah, just making kids strategically, I call it strategic stress and strategic safety. We're not just making your kid's life difficult. We're strategizing about, look, if your mum and dad, how can we make our son's life difficult this week?
Yeah.
As a pair. In schools, we used to call it back to basics week. So just to get the kids back in the mix, we used to have an asterisk and call it back to basics. And every 6th week, all the teachers are all aligned. Like, this is where we realign, punctuality, attendance, uniform, conduct. And that's when I call it strategic stress. That's what I mean, because then it becomes synchronized across the school,
What's an example that you'd give in terms of a suggestion for a parent to put some of that strategic focus in their child's life? So if a child has got it very easy, comfortable. So my son, I asked him to do one thing the other week. that was outside of his usual week. And for an hour and 45 minutes, he wanted to try and make my life challenging. And for the last 15 minutes of the 2 hours, he come out of himself, but he was being stubborn for an hour and 45. And I realised in that moment, it's because he's been asked to do something that's outside of what he usually has to do. Yeah. And he's not used to it. It's not his fault. I've not provided that roadblock or whatever term you want to use. So what sort of things can parents do, or teachers?
Well, you can do it calmly. That's what I've learned. You know, I've got 2 stories about my dad. Dad, can I have a tenner, please? He goes, son, of course you can have a tenner. There's the bucket, there's the sponge, and there's the car keys. Do me every time.
Yeah.
He never said no. Ever to a £1 note. There's the bucket and sponge, son. Next thing you do, my dad got remarried now. I've got little sisters, 25, 21. Can I have he said, I've got a little sister called Emma. He goes, Emma, can I have the controller, please, for TV? She go, when she's about 7, 8, 9. No. Please, can I have the controller, Emma? No. Okay. It's Monday now. On Saturday, when you want to go horse riding, I'm just letting you know 6 days in advance, you won't be going. Have a good week. And Dad would walk out the room.
Yeah.
Saturday comes. She's ready to go. Daddy, we're going. We're going where? You know, and Dad would just follow through. No, we're not going because you didn't do that on Monday.
Where did your dad learn that?
I don't know. I've never asked him. I just think that probably that's 4 kids, isn't it? That's how you learn that.
So you learn on the go.
Listen, I will ask him. Seeing him tomorrow, we'll ask him that.
Have you ever spoke to your dad about that when your mum and dad separated and that period? Have you ever gone back in time with your dad and had that conversation? Or have you it's just something that you've moved from?
You know what? I haven't really asked him. All I know is he moved in with his mate called Dave, who was gay. Brighton's a big gay area, right? So like everyone had a family member that was openly gay in the 90s, which was quite a great place to grow up. I just remember he went and stayed at Dave's house for about 6 months and slept on his sofa. Don't remember anything else other than that. I remember Dave just being a really good fella and a family friend, and just good laugh. But that's all I remember.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was filling out recently, my kids bought me a book that Dad tell me about your life story. Some of the questions are tough to answer.
Are they?
Yeah, because they're questions that you've got to go back a long way because it's asking about your childhood. It's asking about what tough things you went through as a kid. What did you love as a kid?
Yeah.
How did your parents treat you? And, you know, it's asking stuff that actually when you look at it on a piece of paper and you approach it, it brings back the emotion of what you felt back then.
Yeah.
Whether that's good or not. And sometimes you can feel yourself wanting to skip the question. And I'm going to religiously fill that out till it's done. So my kids have got a book to remember the dad. Because I would love to ask my dad questions that I've never asked him about his childhood, his life, what he went through, how did he become the person that he was, what shaped him. I have no idea.
I've got one sad story about my dad.
Go for it.
World Cup final 1966. I play a lot of golf with my dad, as you know, right? He's 71 years old, fit as a fiddle. Where did you watch it, Dad? I didn't, son. Why not? Because I had a job. What? You had a job on the World Cup final, England, and my dad was football nuts. Yeah, he said, I didn't like... Anyway, my granddad, my dad was the eldest of 5 kids. My granddad left. Sorry, my nan left home, right? So my dad had to go and get a job. And Dad had a job at a restaurant, and the restaurant owner in Brighton didn't let him watch the World Cup final. So we heard it on the radio.
Wow.
Killer.
Yeah.
So Dad's quite bitter about that moment in his life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
World Cup final, like, it just wouldn't happen, would it? You're 14. Yeah, he was 14 at the time. So I know that story.
It's the same as you talking about not wanting to cook, isn't it?
Yeah.
You relate, you know, that is live with your dad.
I hate cooking, mate.
Yeah.
Hate it.
Yeah. And that stimulates from all those years ago.
I'm assuming so. I don't want to overanalyze it.
You just can't be bothered to cook.
Yeah, but maybe.
Because you're on the move a lot of the time, aren't you? So it's difficult to sit there
but
and get
still
a
hate
recipe.
cooking.
Yeah.
Bloody hate it.
So when you're a teacher in school then, you've gone from this kid that's found school academically challenging, all of a sudden you're now a teacher.
Random, isn't it?
At what point did you think, I want to be a teacher? Because obviously your goal was to be a professional football player. Did you make it to the pro level?
No.
So what age was you out of football?
19, and then went straight to uni. and then played non-league, and I got worse every year in non-league. Played badly every year. To be fair, I broke my leg at 17 and a half.
Yeah.
That killed me. I forget that, actually. I don't bring that up very much. I always try and play it down, but when you break your leg at 17 and a half, it was a year out.
Back in them days, definitely.
Yeah, like, it was killer.
So where was the decision to become a teacher then?
Right, me and my brother would come home from uni, and one year we started a tennis coaching company, right? I've forgotten about this. I've never shared this with anyone. We had 2 tennis courts opposite our house, and we just went round leafleting all the parents, and we did a 5 till 6 slot and a 6 till 7 slot, and then we just picked up a load of money coaching because we both played tennis from 4. We weren't just like randomly muggy tennis players. So we were all right. I played for my county for 3 or 4 years. So yeah, that was the first thing what I knew about teaching, learning, coaching. That was great.
How old was you then?
Probably about 15, but my brother would do it when he came back from uni. So he was 18, yeah. So we did that, money 5 days a week. That was pretty nifty. And then the teacher thing came about just because I love sport. So it was more default, really. It was more default, right, well, okay, let's just go and teach and see how I get on. And then when you go to uni, you realise that some people love sport like I did, but weren't right for the classroom.
Yeah.
And then I think, in my book, I'll talk about character or calibre. And we're obsessed with calibre, A-levels and degrees. But actually, I think in South London, you've got to have a bit of character because the kids are characters. So I think you learn quite quickly that you've got to have a personality.
Can you remember your first day walking into the classroom?
Yeah, as a trainee teacher. It's actually where Eze went, Greenwich. He wasn't there, obviously, then. I was 19, and I'm teaching PE. John Roan's school in Greenwich, South London. I'm 19, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. Russell, my mentor, best bloke in the world. He's a hero, 6'5", Manchester bloke, working in South London. My first mentor, brilliant bloke. And I play cricket with the Year 7s, and I'm shit at cricket. And Year 7s bowled me out. Kids was like banter, like literally going mad, like you've been bowled out. Like,
this is on your first day?
Yeah, without a doubt, first day. And then the second day, and third day and fourth day, I just remember meeting the same class on the fourth day. And I said to Russell, how are this lot absolutely mental on Thursday and they're absolutely brilliant on a Monday? Like, I couldn't work it out. You had the same group twice. And he went, well, basically the teacher before on a Monday is absolutely minging, and the teacher before you on a Thursday is brilliant. So I learned then about behavioural psychology, like you just get a good teacher and then the kids just keep behaving, and then you get a bad teacher and the kids just go from like absolute, like, yeah, just I learned mad things. So yeah, that was what I learned on my first week.
So as you're in school and as a teacher, 19 years of age, you're realising that character is going to get you through this, not just what you know when you can teach them, it's the person that you are.
Got to laugh at yourself.
What were some of the greatest lessons that you learned in them early teaching days that serve you well still now? There's a story that you told me recently that I want to talk about, where the guy walks into school with a gun. We'll come on to that. We'll come on to that in a little bit. I remember you telling me about that, but tell me about when you're in them early days, your adaptability, your flexibility from trying to teach a subject to trying to build rapport.
Right. First year teaching, I had massive anxiety on a Sunday about teaching GCSE on the Monday to Year 10s. I'm 21, they're 15. We had no interactive whiteboards. We just had textbooks. I remember not sleeping for about 3 years on a Sunday, genuinely, with mad anxiety. So I got up every day, went in every single Monday, would literally be panicking, if not having a panic attack on a Monday before school.
Really?
Yeah, just underskilled for the narrative of GCSE. Our degree was mainly practical PE, outside PE, Year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11s, but went into a classroom, didn't have those skills. That caused me huge anxiety. Practical stuff was always pretty sound with, basketball, football, all invasion games, stuff like that is pretty standard. I had a brilliant PE department that looked after me. They were kind and they were caring, very experienced, very skilled. Very diverse as well, very diverse group of people, and all at least 10 to 15 years older than me. So they'd been there and done it in South London, and I'm grateful to them at Cranwood School for taking care of me, mate.
So the anxiety is kicking in every Monday for 3 years?
Maybe more.
And do you think that was the lack of the knowledge of the subjects, or how to look after the young people to get the best out of it?
Everything, yeah, overwhelming. The school was in special measures.
Yeah.
So we had 2,800 kids. It's the third biggest school in the UK. in Eltham, South East London. The Stephen Lawrence murder had happened about 5-6 years earlier.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of sort of racial divide in the area as well as the school. And it was like, third generation unemployment. Dad's got no job, granddad's got no job, great-granddad's got no job, no aspiration. But what I loved about that school more than anything else was the parents were the first people to look at us as teachers and go, you're like us. Do you know what I mean? We were the first people, my generation of uni, like first working class lads to work in schools, and the parents just go, yeah, you're all right, aren't you? You know, so you're not improving the school, you're improving the community, because that's a different level. And people look at me now and always see the glory, don't they? Like, but actually, the teaching, as I've always said to you, it's made me, mate.
What were some of the things that you saw then in school that was just like really disturbing to you?
One of the second school I worked at, a boy from Sierra Leone had come in on asylum, and at 11 years old saw both of his parents shot. Like, how can you not love that kid? You know, we've had one girl, a Nigerian girl, her mum saw a text message from a boy, she shaved her hair off. Comes into school next day like with her hair shaved off. Like, sad, you know, child abuse stories really.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was really inspiring, but a lot of it was, wow, like if you're not, when I talk about empathy in pro football, like, the empathy comes from that, doesn't it? Like, the empathy comes from every day you got a challenge with a kid, in the third school I worked at, kids didn't have any breakfast, so we created a breakfast club, so kids just have breakfast in the morning, a croissant and a banana, where staff on rotation would get up at 7 o'clock, so be in at school at 7, just to give the kids some grub. So there's all these things going on in the UK, which, not in a rude way, maybe the upper classes are miles away from, and the reality is we've got some serious poverty in the UK, and people need help, don't they?
So you fell in love with teaching because of the impact you could have on communities.
Kids, unreal, mate. Easy to be a good teacher, Luke. Just care. Easiest thing in the world to be a good teacher.
Yeah.
Easiest thing in the world. Like, easiest thing in the world to be a good mate. Just care.
Yeah.
Actions. Saturday mornings for no pay for 5 years. Most PE teachers these days are a bit, I ain't doing that, I'm not getting paid. Well,
what, like extra clubs and things?
Yeah, Saturday morning fixtures. So I think I've ticked all the boxes. My old peers will say to me, I weren't shy of hard work. I don't want them to think I was an amazing teacher, but I think they'll know that, one of the stories about my hard work was I used to do an inclusion PE department club after school on a Friday. So it was all the kids that weren't in the school teams, all the kids that just liked being in my company. We had table tennis, basketball, PS4s, wasn't in those days PS1s, probably PS2s, and the kids could just hang out. I could get all my marking done on a Friday. I'd leave school every Friday making 10 positive phone calls home to every single, I'd have my list, so I go home with good energy, and all the staff are down the pub, and they knew I'd get there at 5:30 because they knew that my thing was, again, doing extra, because I needed my peers to know that I'm the guy that does extra. And that was just important for my own self-worth. Like, that was more gratitude. I got 80 kids turning up for an after-school club on a Friday.
Yeah.
Just
special.
Some of them just sitting there on the crash mats. You just get crash mats out, just sit down. No problem. Just be with me, be with you. And I'd sit there and do my books anyway, so I probably should have been paying more attention, but I was marking my books.
How did you find it in school with teachers that didn't share the same care, desire and empathy and the passion to grow a community? Because we all know in schools, in every business, there's a mixture of people, isn't there? So did you find it challenging when you're working in school and you've got this ethos, when you was coming across teachers that it was just a job, or wasn't there any of them?
Well, in my corporate training, I call it the Downgrade. So I'm not shy on this opinion. I've got a chapter in my book called The Problem of Teachers. I call the teachers, like most businesses, a third, and a third. A third change your life, a third of in the middle. You could be changed with better mentoring, and a third normally don't give a shit. So depressing, really. People doing a job because of the holidays, and people are quite lazy. And I said in my book I could never go for a pint with anyone that I didn't respect, and I didn't. And people would see me as abrasive maybe in my 20s, but I'm not going for a pint with you when you're a lazy bastard at school. So I always, even now, mate, I only hang around with achievers, Luke. I know it sounds bad. I only hang around with people that I respect. I wouldn't be here on the train with you if I didn't respect you. Do you know what I mean? I think it's really important that that we surround yourself around people that, you know, they say that you're average if you're 5, don't they? So yeah, just I work with some great people, so I'm definitely not going for a pint with the people that are lazy. It's just not happening.
When did you start to get that outlook though? Because, you know, going from the kid that found school tough to then having that view that you've got now in terms of I want to spend time with high achievers, at what point did you start to shift your thinking?
Mentors, people. First practice Russell, second practice was in Croydon. I had to teach dance. You know, how many A-licensed coaches in the country could teach dance in the last 5 minutes, would they? A kid called Dean, won't mention his surname, when I ain't fucking doing dance. Dance is for wussies, he said. So I got that to challenge at 20 years old. And then 21, I got my final placement at the school, got my first job at, and there was 13 PE teachers, and all really good at their job. So men and women just literally nicked. They say the best coaches are the best thieves. And I'm just working with these people, and I'm just stealing. And we did Saturdays, so I knew about work ethic. Staff are not doing Saturdays. So I was just inbred in the department. I got mentored early. I got mentored the right way early. Robin Field, my old head of PE, was a Leeds boy, and in his late 60s at that stage, you know, absolute legend at the school, and told me I won't get a job unless I do Saturday mornings. And we were in a London school. No one in South London did Saturday mornings, so we had to play all the grammar schools down the road because the behaviour was so bad. All the inner city schools said we're not doing Saturday mornings, but it was a school tradition. So I think I've walked it.
Yeah,
I think.
And now you've got a very clear view of what that looks like when you're in company of these people and when you're not.
Well, hard work.
Yeah.
Care. Duty of care, innit? Say care, it's duty of care, innit?
Yeah, and you look at these relationships that you built. So you've mentioned a name earlier that some may or may not know, depending if they've got a sporting background. But tell us some of the relationships that when you met these young people that you're still in touch with today, the ones that will have heard of.
Well, Michael Turner is Hull, Sunderland. He was one of the first students to turn pro, played in the Premier League. Most humble kid in the world, South East London boy, not a typical footballer.
What do you mean by not a typical footballer?
Well, just because he's humble.
Yeah.
So he's just on the level. So I'm in touch with him. I'm in touch with so many ex-students. Do you know what the real superheroes are? The real superheroes are the ones that had absolutely stinkers lives, terrible lives, and the ones that are now functioning. My ex-pupils are electricians, my ex-pupils are plumbers, my ex-pupils, my painters and decorators. Danny Pearson's just done my painting for me. So I'm always trying to, you know, look after the ex-pupils. They're always messaging me for little videos of the footballers. Obviously, I met Barari Eze, who's playing for Crystal Palace in England at 12, and I was his district team manager. So again, that's another thing I did on Saturday mornings for no money. Now, can you imagine if I'd never met Eze and I hadn't had the attitude to do district football for nothing?
Yeah.
Now Eze's now, you know, a friend, but he's now a key part of my business story because I've known him since he was 12, and he's had 7 rejections from football clubs and so-called experts, note my sarcasm, to then play for England. So I'm in a great position to mentor, obviously, elite athletes. But Junior Stanislas played in the Premier League, taught him for many years, and loads of others. I don't think your listeners will really care too much about that, mate.
So you think about that, right? That you do the extra Saturday morning, you put the extra work in, and before you know it, one of your clients, stroke friend, becomes a world-class superstar. Yeah. You don't do the Saturday morning, that relationship doesn't get built, does it? But the reason I think these young people, as I did, as you did, gravitate towards these mentors and coaches is because they see the authenticity and the genuine desire to help them. Yeah. You can't fake that, can you? Yeah.
But remember, Eze didn't go to my school either. It's even more significant. I met Eze because John Roan, so the first school I did a placement at, he went there. Yeah. I then worked at a neighbouring school in Greenwich. His PE teacher used to have fixtures against us all the time. And as he tells the story in my book, I went over and I said, Paul Cater, the PE teacher, I called him the Paul Weller. He had Converse and he had long hair. He's a bit alternative PE teacher, a bit skateboarder, you know, which wasn't conventional, you know, a bit alternative PE teacher. So he didn't really know his football. So I said, Paul, look, you're a lot of rubbish and my lot of rubbish. Can I just sit both teams down and coach them? And all of his kids are looking at me going, you ain't even my PE teacher, mate. Like, shut up. Like, this is a rivalry. But I didn't live like that because not only were we dealing with football kids, we were dealing genuinely with gangs and stuff. So it was much bigger. It was a bit bigger why to what we do as educationalists.
Tell us about a guy that walks into school with a weapon.
Well, that was it brought me to tears. I was in school. There was some CCTV of it, actually. About 5 o'clock, receptionist goes home at 5. She calls the panic alarm, and I'd never heard the panic alarm. That goes straight through to Lewisham Police. I didn't know that either. So I walk over to reception. Probably 80% of staff gone home. There's 20% of us around. Bloke's in a long trench coat, and he's saying he's going to shoot the receptionist. And I walk in not knowing what's going on. And he's just got a massive coat, and he's just got his hand in his pocket. And then he's turned it at me, and I just shit myself. Anyway, he was off his nut and drugs. We had about a 2-minute conversation. I sat down, closed my body language. It's all I remember, just trying not to be confrontational. So I remember just avoid confrontation, avoid eye contact. The receptionist ducked. She crawled back out of the reception into staff room. There was 2 or 3 people in the staff room. They called the police as well. And then it was just me and him just sitting there. And
still got the gun in his hand.
He put it back in his pocket at that stage, in his long trench coat. He was in his 50s. I remember him, grey hair. Just looked mad, man. He just looked mad. And then I just remember keeping him for a couple of minutes. And then the old Bill were rapid. Quickest I've ever seen old Bill, ever. Sorry, the police. Yeah, they got there in about 3 minutes. And they walked in, saw him out the back windows, and then they went round the side, had it all covered, and literally someone just rugby tackled him. And there was literally 7 of them. Bang, gone. They were quick.
Yeah.
But I've just broke down into tears, mate. Just literally just blubbed it. It was like, what am I doing?
Can you remember what was going through your mind in that moment there?
No.
You just acted off instinct.
Don't talk about it much. Don't talk about it. Head said you give me a week off. I was like, nah, just get me back in. I mean, a sadder story than that was the year 11s at that stage. We had to take the phones off them for a school game because they would text the gangs to meet us for a school game. So we couldn't tell the kids at that stage who we were playing against.
Really?
Yeah. So we would have to just write phones in the bag, but then there's always a sneaky one has 2 phones. Went to a school game, year 11s against the rival school, and kids come out the bush and machetes and knives. And I suppose I'm a bit anti-establishment, but, not in a rude way. I don't want to get political on this call, but the average politician ain't going to have a clue that that's going on.
So that's all at the school game. You start the game, kids come out the bushes with weapons.
Yeah.
What happens?
Our kids... the fences at tennis courts?
Yeah.
The double fences? Sometimes they have the double one. Our kids climbed over a double fence in their football kit and run home.
Wow.
And I'm just literally standing there. They were going for my captain. I'm literally standing there calling the police as they got machete in a chain. And he's fending them off. My whole team climbed over 2 fences into the garden. All of them got a bus home that night. And I had all their school uniform in a minibus. And... I had to come in tracksuits the next day and I had to give them their school uniform back.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't really talk about these stories much. I think sometimes people, like I talk about my experiences in pro football now. And, but all of these things I've seen, you meander and you learn and you about vulnerability, and all of these things. I don't know. Is vulnerability difficult to reveal? I just don't know. You're challenging me today on this. It's quite a serious chat, innit? We've never been so serious, have we?
Well, I think what really interests me is what shapes the man that you are now. And these experiences, these moments can't not have an impact on Steve Sallis, who's working with these best athletes in the world. It just can't have, going through what you went through as a kid and coming home crying to your parents separating, to kids running on football, tennis, scaling tennis courts to get away from gangs, and the guy with the gun. All of these things, as I know in my life and your life, they have some kind of impact, don't they, one way or another. And they also give you experience of life, which there's no teacher course, there's no football coaching educational course you can go on that gets you ready for them moments. I had a moment last night, right? And as you're talking about it, it's happening in my head. Last night, I had a moment, what you had there in a local Asda petrol station. And I was caught in that moment of, what do I do here? Do I get involved? Do I stay out? Do I step in, or do I wait? All of that stuff's going through your mind in that moment, and you don't really know what to do. Guy comes in to the petrol station. I'm queuing, and the guy's ranting at the youngster behind the counter, and he's clearly on another level for obvious reasons. And the guy behind the counter refuses to serve him because yesterday he nicked something. But the guy's contesting his innocence. Now, the real challenge I've got in this moment is, a kid comes over to me and says hello to me. I shake his hand and we start talking. That kid plays in my football team, so I'm my son's coach. That kid is with him, right? The kid who's talking to me, who's my son's age, and I'm thinking of all this thing going in my head. My son's at home in bed. It's 10:45 p.m. Wow. He's got school tomorrow. I'm now having a conversation with this kid who's absolutely outstanding as a human being. He's captain. He's a wonderful kid. I now have clocked that he's with him because also his family are there, and there's 3 other guys, and there's his mum, and there's him. And then they're buying whatever they're buying, and they're at the counter. Now, this guy is getting very confrontational. Now, I'm there, and me being the way I am, I find it very difficult to not get involved in that situation. And all I'm thinking of, I've got my Crocs on. I'm thinking, I've got Crocs on. If something happens here, I'm in trouble. I need to find a way to take my Crocs off and put them on properly, because you know the Crocs, you can wear them around the back of the heel, around the front. I wear them around the front as I am today. So this is going through my mind as I'm talking to this young kid. He's asking me when we're starting training again because he can't wait to get back. And in my blind eye, I'm hearing what's happening, and I know something's going to happen. So he goes and he walks out, because now I think he's aware that this is a scenario that he doesn't want to be in, because this kid loves me and I love him as a son. He's a wicked guy. He walks out, and I check outside. I see 3 guys. I see his mum, and now the guy's gone out, and now I'm watching this, and there's 5 other people in there waiting to be served. It's who's going to be the one to confront the guy. So I'm really calm in these situations. So I very rarely get flustered. Very rarely anybody can get to me. And I'm thinking, what do I do? Do I say something that ignites it even more? Yeah. And it kicks off, and then he turns on me, and all of a sudden I'm in a scenario where we are going to be fighting in the petrol station. Do I wait and observe? Do I watch what happens? Do I try and make a call? What do I do? And all of that stuff's going through your mind. You can't train for that, can you? You can't. And now I'm confident and comfortable that if he comes towards me, I'm happy to encroach in that confrontation. I don't want to. I've got a kid out there that sees me as a role model. He's got 3 other guys out there that I'm thinking, if this happens, we all know what's going to happen.
So what did you do?
I'm stood there and I just watched and I observed. And I just stood and I stood and I stood. And I'm thinking, this guy's not going to do anything. He's just giving it a lot of because by now, if he's going to do anything, he would have done. The kid is safe behind the counter because there's enough space that he can't get to him. So I'm thinking, that kid's safe. He can't get to him. The first thing I say to this guy that's raving at him, he's going to come at me. And then it is going to go to another level. And I've got no choice then. I've got to get my Crocs off. I've got to put the heels back, and I've got to get involved, right? And I've just hoped that these other guys there help the scenario. And I'm thinking, how much longer do I wait? How much longer do I wait? So I just stay at the back of the queue, and I'm ready. And then all of a sudden the guy walks out, and I'm thinking, okay, he's gone. I get to the front of the queue. I said to the young man, I said, you know what? You did remarkably well there. He stayed so cool. He said, you know what? He came last night. He nicked something. He's come back in. He's being aggressive. He said, I'm going to have to call the police because if he comes back, I don't want to deal with that again. Yeah. The guy comes steaming in again. So now I'm at the front. The guy stands next to me. So as he comes next to me, I'm thinking, I'm just going to see where he's at in terms of, you know, in my area. So he's there, and I just step, really. I didn't step into him. I just stepped to pay, thinking, is he going to try and pull me out of the situation, or is he going to get involved with me? And all the time I'm watching him in the left side of my eye. And the guy was just full of mouth. He clearly wasn't. As soon as his mates had gone, he calmed down and he stopped doing what he's doing. There was a part of me there thinking, in a minute, I'm going to have to say something to this guy because it's going beyond respectful for this human being that's behind the counter. And he turns and he walks off. So I waited for another 5 minutes. I'm talking to the guy. I walk around the shop. He doesn't come back. And I said to the young guy, I think you should ring the police. So I talked to him about it. I said, you was brilliant. We have a conversation. He's cool. I get in the car and I start driving home. This was 11 o'clock last night. It was before you sent me a message last night, didn't you, saying, Lukey, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
I'm at the petrol station. I've just got off a train from working with a team in Manchester. I get 15 minutes home and it's bothering me. It's bothering me. I'm like, what if they go back? So I turn my car around. I go back to the petrol station. I park up and I walk in. I just say to the lad, is anything else up? He said, no, they've gone. They've not been back. He said, I've called the police. The police have gone to look for him. And I felt comfortable then, but I felt uncomfortable because all the way home, Steve, I'm challenging myself. Should I have stepped earlier? Should I have got involved? Should I have taken it away from the person behind the counter? Should I have encroached in that guy's space and fronted him? Or did I do the right thing? And in that moment, you just don't know, do you?
Well, we've got a strategy called acknowledge, sanction, ignore in education. So do I acknowledge this behaviour? Do I sanction it? And do I ignore it?
Yeah.
So I've got all these little nuggets that I use, and you've probably done that without knowing ASI, right? But Barari Box, don't let someone's attitude and behaviour affect your attitude and your behaviour. That's always a good one. And again, you do this stuff, but a lot of people don't know the labels. And what I've done with my educational background is really tied in what the great people do already, but just giving it a bit of a, giving it a bit of structure around the educational science that we need. So, mate, you've used Barari Box there. Yeah,
and we're going to talk about that in a second. What fascinated me about the story about the guy that came into your school with the gun, I remember when you told me this years ago, and you said that you used your body language and your tone of voice. And in the moment, you probably didn't know you was doing it, like I didn't know last night what I was doing, because you go into that just behaviour.
At that time, I did. At that
did
time,
you?
At that time, I knew I got to close my body language, and I knew I got to change my voice, and I knew I got to calm my.
How did you know that, though?
Just years of training. If you got an angry kid outside the classroom, and they've been sent out, most people stand opposite that kid and then confront the kid. But the best thing to do is just sit down on the wall and face the wall. And they'll be there facing that way, and you just sit down on the wall and you're lower than them and you just have a conversation. So anyway, all of these 1%ers that add value to relationships, and avoid confrontation really, and make sure we find solutions to problems.
So tell us the terminology you just used about what we've just spoken about. What did you say it's called? The something box?
Barari Box.
Tell us about that.
Barari Box is just a circle where it says your attitude and your behaviour, their attitude, their behaviour. So often people, I always say mirror positive, don't mirror negative. So if someone comes in and they mirror negative behaviour, try not to mirror that. But if they got positive behaviour, mirror the positive.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, kid comes in, they're late, and then the kid gets confrontational, and guess what? The teacher gets confrontational, and we got two people having a confrontation.
Standoff.
So a great teachers just know, don't let their attitude and their behaviour affect your attitude and your behaviour, which is an art. Which links to ASI. Do I acknowledge it? Do I sanction it? Do I ignore it?
Yeah.
And great parents, sometimes you've got to learn to ignore. Great teachers, you've got to sometimes learn just to acknowledge, And then sanction. I do believe long-term sanction for short-term sanction for long-term reward. I do believe that sanctions, if they're clean and consistent, do really add value to behaviour.
Yeah.
But again, if the behaviour's not changing 12 months later, then you got to change tact, and to the side of it, you need mentoring and and education on behavioural change. So
you're learning all of this right on the go as a youngster that's gone from wanting to be a footballer, is now a teacher. All of this is happening in school. You then step into the football world with all this experience and all this education. Now, I lived in the football world for a long time, as you know, and it was very rare that anybody came at something from a different angle. How was you received in the footballing world with your methodology that you was bringing in from the educational background?
A third of people were all over it. A third were in the middle, and a third looked at me like I got three heads. Yours as a school teacher, what do you know? You just get that a lot. That comment used to actually come out of people's mouths.
Really?
Yeah, you're a school teacher. And I'm thinking, really?
Well, it was actually said to you.
Yeah. So I've had my own battles.
Yeah.
And And obviously this podcast is amazing, but I've been on a podcast, another one with 17 million downloads, and apparently now I'm more important or more intelligent.
Yeah.
But it's nonsense, isn't it? So it's only the narrow lens of the football industry. And I'm not shy in telling the truth about the football industry. It's prehistoric. It's 2023, I'll be getting a director of football. No, you should have had them 30 years ago. So don't give yourself a pat on the back for things you should be doing 30 years ago. And then everyone just copies, don't they? It's like that something happens and everyone just copies, that methodology. It's embarrassing. So all I've said is that there's this thing going on in education which is really strategic and really operational. And in coaching we call it coaching, but in teaching we call it teaching and learning. So why don't they call it coaching and learning? And coaching just ends. And then I'll tie that in with, just because you taught it doesn't mean to say the players learnt it. So I see this massive gap between coaching and learning in football. Managers coming in saying, "Oh, bloody coached them that, we lost 3-0. Well, you did coach him, but they didn't learn anything. So I think, again, that me challenging the system on teaching and learning has been not, again, to cause havoc, but just to genuinely tell the truth and go, look, there's some really bad practice going on. By the way, there's some great practice.
Yeah.
But again, it's calling itself professional football, but it was as far away from professional in some cases as I'd ever seen, ever.
Do you think that is because lots of coaches in sport in general, particularly football, have been a footballer, then they've gone into football coaching and potentially not seen what you've seen?
Of course. But again, you can go and do your A licence, and if you're an ex-pro, Luke, you can go and do your A licence and your B licence at the same time. How is that allowed? We're talking about cognitive bias. I'm talking about inclusion. Like that's not. They're not the same job. Playing and coaching are not the same job. If they were, then it'd be quite an easy transition. So we know that loads of coaches fail, but I don't know. I'm just pro people walking the walk and doing the yards and doing the mileage. If you look at managers that have failed, I don't think they're failed because they're bad people. They're failed because they're under-skilled and underdeveloped in that role. And I think the football bit's one thing, but I think the leadership thing's another thing.
Yeah.
My master's degree was in leadership in ed psych, and it changed my life, mate.
Well, the thing is, Steve, for you talk about when you're a 19-year-old kid going to school for the first day, you learn on the move, where a football coach, manager is sacked while they're trying to learn. They haven't got time. Yep. So they're instantly trying to win. And if you don't win, if you don't get the GCSE grade, you don't get sacked, you've got to work on it. Yep. The football manager gets sacked. So it's often, I think they overlook the importance, which is the long-term success of what you do, and just try and do all they can today to get the result. But we know it just doesn't work. When you go into football, you've gone into football then, and you said there you're just a teacher, what do you know? Yeah. How did you overcome that to get to the level that you are now, that you've worked with the likes of Jude Bellingham and these superstars? How did you overcome that? Because that is tough to hear.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
People, you get called a motivational speaker, right? So do I. Embarrassing comment. Like, no. Being motivational is just a standard thing. Like, care, duty of care, be kind, be positive, those things. But I've got knowledge. So when you've got knowledge to impart, like, that knowledge is something I've studied, but the key to my knowledge is applicable knowledge, living this stuff, right? And, I'm living it. So, and by the way, when I mean knowledge, I don't just mean successes, I mean failures. Like, you're teaching, kids who go, "Sir, your lessons are shit." Mr. Powell, I called him earlier, he's one of my best pals. Powell's better than you, Sallis. And you'd be like, wow, man, downgrade. I'm the downgrade. But in the pro industry, you can't call your manager shit. And so linking back to the managers, the aspiring managers know, not necessarily about me, but they know there's a massive blind spot, but you need self-awareness to know your blind spot, and you need to be really vulnerable to know your blind spot, and you need to be really sincere to say, I need some help with that. Yeah. An expert hires an expert. Right? I didn't play pro football. I wasn't good enough, right? So that's fine. But you need multidisciplinary team. You need strengths, size, and differences, not similarities. Right? So if we keep appointing the same people all the time, then we're going to get the same outcome. And all I've done is gone, look, I don't know more than you, or my experiences are just different than you, and I think I can really help you win football matches. And respectfully, I've gone Wimbledon save relegation, Cardiff save relegation, and Northampton promotion in 3 seasons. And I don't think, it's not about me, it's about we, but the managers that have appointed me, I'm really grateful to, because they're the ones that are, really open-minded about about elite performance.
Do you think the managers that have appointed you and the football world that brings you in are people that are more open-minded to the new way of thinking and more secure about themselves, but don't, they're not frightened of being challenged? Because you're going to challenge people, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm murder. Yeah.
Which is what you want. Not everybody can take that.
Well, listen, everything I say to you between 7 in the morning and 7 at night is always professional, never personal. So that'll be how I get around that. If someone wants a yes man, then I'm definitely not for them. But I'm not anarchic and I'm not disloyal. I'm the most loyal person in the world.
Yeah.
But I think because of maybe my social media profile is I can be a bit cutting and a bit to the point. Maybe that's my accent or my tone. But I'm very caring. You know me, like me as a friend, right? I'm very emotionally, I'm quite a sensitive person. But in work, like, I'm there to get results.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've got a school gig tomorrow. I'm there to get results. Right? I'm there to inspire kids. Football, I'm there to win matches. So if you want a yes man to go, yes, Gaffer, your methodology is great, but actually we're losing every week, then I'm definitely not your man. But I've got genuine methodology that can help culture, that can help leadership, that can help language, that can help coaching, that can help align the lens of all of these players to create victories.
Why would a manager bring you in then? So would they bring you in because they're struggling? Would they bring you in because they want more success? Would they bring you into it with the players, the coaching staff? What would be your real impact area?
Well, in a full-time capacity, I said obviously I'm at Northampton Town at the moment. We got promoted last year. John Brady, I said, John, if you saw me work full-time, I said you would see quadruple impact. I said, I'm in a day a week and you don't see, so I've had to be much more strategic. But if you saw me daily on an operational level, I think I could add value to a backroom team in a major way, working with leadership and corporates and picking up that business acumen into pro sport, and then I can work operationally with players. I think I'm quite different because I've played as well. So people saw me the psychologist. I'm not a psychologist. I do mindset. My master's degree was in ed psych, so I can't call myself a sports psych, and I never have, to be fair. But I think that people see me in isolation as, the psych man. No. Like, having played and coached, like, here we go, I'll apply it for you. An agent calls me last week and says, Sallis, can you help my player with concentration? I'm like, do you think I'm Paul McKenna? And they said, laughing, I'm not a hypnotist. So I said, tell the player to fucking get fitter. And he laughed and he went, what? I said, well, save your money and save his time. Like, anyone that's played football knows if your concentration's going last 20 minutes, like, get fitter. So there's a huge pragmatist in me as well, and I think sometimes in football, you got to smell this stuff and you got to know the game, and the game has been my life. Remember, so it's sometimes I underplay that a little bit. I don't always get involved in coaching. I could coach if I wanted to. I just can't be asked.
Do you feel it's because you can have a bigger impact doing what you do now?
There we go. We talked about that off air. School gigs.
Yeah.
My purpose, my why for life, my ability to have a life which is impacting beyond the football industry, really.
Do you see the same challenges in football with the mentality of some coaches as you do in the corporate world, in businesses with leaders?
Well, all my book is based around self-awareness, so that's step one. Like, baseline one is where you are, how you act, how you interact, how you react. How would people talk about you when you're not in the room? What would they say? What will these guys say when I'm left? What impact do you leave on people? I call it the people that look but don't see. They're sort of looking at you but looking more important. Who's more important in the room? You get loads of them, don't you? So I see the same trends, to be fair, of behaviours in all walks. I'm telling all the CEOs to put self-awareness on their agendas and on their strategic meetings. Them defining what self-awareness is, and just bringing it straight back and stripping behaviour as far back as we can to self-awareness and get that bit banked. I get managers that want player feedback and then they just interrupt their players all the time. I've got a chapter in my book called Stop Interrupting, Let Them Finish. Random, my book, isn't it? Of all those people that we work with that just interrupt you every single day. Now, I don't want to weird you out because, you've interrupted me and I've interrupted you, but that's natural, that's organic. But it's the people that do it every day and they don't even realise that they're interrupting you. So,
and I also don't think it's the over talking someone, isn't it, with an opinion that's going to be bigger than yours.
Yeah, well, they think they're louder, so they think they know more. Those ones.
Meetings at businesses is ridiculous for that, isn't it? When you sit in a boardroom with 8 people, I've been in there and I'm thinking, is this started? You know, when we start this podcast, the red button comes on, it's on air, and we go. You know, in the meeting boardroom, you're thinking, we haven't talked about anything yet.
Yeah, comment or contribution.
I heard
loads
you
of
talk about
comments.
this before,
yeah, loads of comments.
Just share that, because I really like that philosophy.
Well, Andy Bate taught me that as a Tarmac, one of my clients. So he said, loads of people making comments, not making contributions. So can we be strategic in our meetings? And I don't know. I can't relay on a podcast to you all the experiences I've had. But when you've been involved in a school improvement for all those years, right, you can't have flaky meetings. Right, they are watertight. You got agendas, you got minutes. Like everything's minuted, and then you follow on next week. What's been done, what hasn't been done. You know, short, medium, long-term planning. Everything's watertight, and football clubs don't even have meetings, mate. Corridor conversations everywhere.
Yeah.
So, wow. Like, you know, and then guess what? We've lost again. Has anyone spoke to that player? No. Okay. Is anyone going to speak to that player? No. Is anyone asked how that player feels about that situation? No. Like, and only football clubs only got 30 players. Like schools had 2,800 kids. And 250 teachers. So when I'm talking about strategy, that's what I actually mean. Like, there is no excuse.
Yeah.
And then obviously, you know, the Scottish FA have taken me on board and really embraced my work. So I'm grateful to them on the record. And football clubs are as well. But I still, I know there's a Marmite element to my work.
Why?
Partly probably because of my manner at times, but also I think the methodology is people telling the truth and they don't really know, but also people don't understand what actually I do. You know, I'm not a coach, I'm not a psychologist. Does that make sense? I'm just a guy that's created a methodology which I think is high performance, and that doesn't fit in the box, which is elite sport.
But your CV's showing that it works.
No, I know. And listen, I'm talking to the converted. Yeah, I'm talking to the person that, you know, you could easily go and do any of the jobs that I do in pro football just by saying sensible things every day.
Yeah.
And people say to me, someone said to me on Facebook recently, what's your job title? I thought it was hilarious. And I just said, as a piss take, head of saying sensible things. You know, so like, look, so you could go to me, Sallis, what do you think? I go, I don't know, but I'll find out for you in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Like, sensible things. And I think great leaders just say sensible things every day. So I don't try and say subjective bullshit, you know, just try and make the process of what we do and how we have conversations as objective as we can. And when people see me intimately, I don't think I'm Marmite at all. But I think because I'm zero bullshit about getting shit done, I think sometimes take that as confidence, arrogance, but it's not. It's just I just want to get results, and I just want us to work and be cohesive and be kind and be empathetic, and you know, not that I don't make errors, because I do, but also high performance, there's a softness to it as well.
So when you're talking about self-awareness, when you're talking about self-awareness, how do you keep checking your self-awareness? Because a few times through this conversation, you've talked about your social media. Sometimes I can be a bit this.
Yeah.
You know, is it a conscious thing that you're portraying yourself in a way, or is it just how it comes out?
No, I just know myself well enough. I know how other people think about other people thinking. So I'm always aware that, you know, you're never going to be everyone's cup of tea, are you? But all I can do is be myself and be authentic, and I'm actually cool with that. I'm not expecting to be liked by everyone. I just know that when the phone, after I came off the High Performance podcast, right, and that's changed my life in a major way.
In what way?
Just 2,000 emails within a week.
Really?
Yeah, just, you know, like I came the week after Toto Wolff, mate. You know, Formula One Mercedes, and then who's this geezer? Like, you know, so that was, wow, just changing forever. And I've forgotten your question. What did you ask me about?
Self-awareness. So
yeah. Sorry, mate. So I reflect like everyone else does, but I'd be an idiot if I thought. I think if I said the other side, I think, oh yeah, everyone really likes me. Then I think I'm being a bit of a knob, right? Do you know what I mean? So I think I'm Marmite, because I think the Sallises, as a family, I think we just Marmite. Like, you love us or hate us, we're the most loyal, honest, straight talking, zero bullshit family. And if you want that as your friend and as a confidant, and I've said to the the people in the studio here today that I'll help you out. It's not hard, is it? Just be kind. No one can ever doubt that.
Yeah.
But some people, you know, there's judgment and jealousy everywhere, Luke, everywhere. And maybe the non-sensitive side don't give a shit, but I am actually quite sensitive, and I would like people to maybe have a look underneath, but then people haven't got the emotional intelligence to really look underneath.
Yeah.
In society in general, I don't necessarily mean my followers or whatever, but one thing no one can ever take away is my duty of care. And when you were asking earlier about what do I do with elite athletes, what I do is give them a perspective which is different lens to what they get in their buildings at football clubs, and that's a bigger why, a bigger purpose. You know, charity work, selflessness, kindness, using that profile that they've got to, you know, I know sometimes my players look at me and go, this he's mad. But I don't think I'm mad. I just give a shit about you having an impact on the world in a much bigger way than you on the pitch.
So tell us about that. You just mentioned there about when you're working with athletes. What is the usual Steve Sallis method working with a young athlete or an established one?
Honesty, and empathy, depending on where they're at. That's huge. Bespoke work, nothing's the same. Real clear objectives around the four corners: technical, tactical, physical, psychological. So work with golfers too. So pick that up. But I've got a few boxers now. Got a few people that I'm working with that I've picked up tech, tac, phys and psych. You know, what your super strengths, what your 10 out of 10 traits, what you're going to get paid for. You know, what's your X factor traits. Really looking at. I've got a racing driver at the moment. He's absolutely flying, bless him. He's just flying just because he's had an opportunity to get stuff off his chest.
Yeah.
And that's just freed him up. So a lot of times it's personal, a lot of times it's professional, a lot of times one affects the other. So just listening, piecing together the professional, personal, and creating a really bespoke personal jigsaw for them to really thrive.
Oh, you've worked with me personally, you've worked with my family, you've worked with my friends, you've joined me on projects, and your work is just out of this world. It's phenomenal. I think the realness is the beauty in it, that it is real, and it's a real person sat with you that genuinely wants to help you. Where do you see yourself? You know, you do your future self program all over the world, all over the place with young people. Where do you see the future self of Steve Sallis? Do you ever get time to think about that?
Yeah. Do you know where?
Where do you see?
Golfing.
Is that where you want to be?
Yeah,
playing or working with?
No, not working, just playing. Yeah, just living. COVID, you know, COVID, perspective again. I don't mind sharing. I had a bit of burnout post-COVID. So that's given me more education. I had to go and stay at my dad's for a month to reset myself. Don't mind sharing those shitty stories about myself because I am just a bloke called Steve trying to help people on my journey. But again, you can't drink from an empty cup, right?
Yeah.
So I am so mindful. Got a new book coming out. Yeah. I'm excited about that.
Tell it to me.
Cannot wait.
Talk to me.
Right, controversial title. How Not to Be a Leadership Dickhead and a Guide to a High-Performing Leader. And it's 25 years of my applied and theoretical experiences.
Brilliant.
And I'm praying that Cameron at Random Penguin House, if he listens to this, gives me a book deal.
We'll send it to him.
They're the biggest book publishers in the world.
When's it out?
Well, it's not out until someone decides.
Is it real? Is it done?
It's done.
Is it?
Yeah, it's ready to go.
Well done.
So family health is everything. My brother's back from Malaysia. Can't wait to see him next week. My mate's back from Australia, so I care more about going to the comedy club next Thursday, playing golf with my old man and my brother, going to get a few beers down me on Thursday night, seeing my best mate from Australia I haven't seen in 15 years and cuddling him to death and laughing. And those moments of... By the way, I can't always be like this because I haven't had the success, but now I've got a bit of success and a bit of cash in the bank. I'm now not worrying. I've had 3 jobs come in today on the train on the way up here. Do you know what I mean? For school gigs, school teacher training, corporate event. So I'm really content right now. Really content. And I haven't always been content. I felt like I've been chasing a fucking, sorry to swear, mate, a long time. I've been chasing a long time. In my 30s, I'm chasing. My 20s, I'm chasing.
Chasing what?
Chasing fucking promotions, getting rid of anxiety, pressure. Got an older brother that's succeeding. He's my best mate, but, you know, he's a head teacher, following my brother. Living, love life, friendships, your own personal intrinsic motivation. Do you know what I mean? Paying off your mortgage as a London school teacher. Just the real shit, Luke.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The real stuff that everyone, cost of living crisis, going to Aldi like everyone else is because it's cheaper. Just everyday living, right?
Yeah.
Every day, just thinking, how can I give myself, my future self, the best possible opportunity to have a healthy life? And notice I say healthy, nothing else matters. Nothing.
Do you see yourself continuing doing what you do?
Yeah, but not at the same rate, because I'm going to become granddad in the school soon. You know what I mean? Who's granddad? And all my mates say, Sallis, you can keep going, kids will love you, but I'm going to be granddad soon. So as soon as someone shouts out granddad, then I know, okay, that's me done.
And what's next?
Luke, there isn't. I got asked that, my first job at Millwall, where do you want to be 5 years' time? I said happy.
Yeah.
And I'll say it to every single person. If anyone's want to know, like, people say, like, I'm the most organic man in the world. Honestly, you can make all the phone calls in the world in business, right? And no one will give you a job. You make no phone calls, it will come in anyway. Because if you give to the universe, you know how spiritual I am, don't you? If you give to the universe, you get back. Like, I'm that spiritual. If you give to people and you serve people, it is coming back tenfold.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about spirituality when I was 21, but I was law at 21. So I helped people out at 21. I taught Chris Eva at 11, and he's the one that changed my life 20 years later. Megan Carver, I need to share this story quickly before we finish. I met her when I was 12, bottom set maths, and she's the one that owns Carver PR, and she's the one that got me on 5 Live. And the 5 Live people got me on the High Performance podcast. And the 5 Live people spoke to Talk Sport and got me on Talk...
Oh, from a 12-year-old friendship.
Yeah, because... Don't know, man.
People remember you from then, don't they? Of who you were, how you were.
Yeah. Listen, I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's great. When I listen to you talk, because I've known you a long time, and I think sometimes the way that you talk, people that don't know you will see straight talking. It doesn't mean what you're saying isn't right or isn't great. I think some people see what they want to see. I see a wonderful, sensitive, caring, empathetic human being. On the end of every video I see of yours, every conversation, every call, I see that guy. I think when I look at you, it's kind of, I always think in my mind as a coach and as a human being, what more could they do? Like, to have a real impact on the world and an even greater level that they are now. Because you and I are one person. There's no doubt, you know, you're taking your calls, you're booking your appointments, you're chasing your invoices, and, you know, you're trying to get paid, you're trying to travel here, you're trying to travel everywhere. It's like, how can you give more to the world in the time that you've got without having the burnout scenarios that you've had?
Yeah, I've got an answer. It's probably PR.
Yeah.
If I'd have been busy and knocked down the PR companies in London and gone, look, I'm all right. Listen, I've got to be humble in the world, but I probably have been too humble, I think.
Yeah. In what way?
I just haven't knocked people's doors down. You know, when I talk about organic,
Yeah.
Luke, I'm so conscious of living. I love my golf, mate. So I love going out a game of golf. So that's the one thing that makes me happy.
Yeah.
And love my gym as well, and reading and writing my book, and I've got to live.
Yeah.
I'm not, I've killed myself for 25 years. I've worked really hard. I'm not shy of that, sharing that, but it's time to live. So the one thing I haven't worked smart enough.
Yeah.
So I'm having a bit of business coaching now about scaling. So I've got an expert helping me with that. Not sure how that's going to look, but the main thing is I need to go and get PR, and I know that. But I'm not. You know, hello, how you doing? I'm Steve. Like, what? But someone out there would probably really like my work.
Yeah. Well, lots of people are, because you.
I know that, but
yeah.
it's all self-made, isn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't really gone hello Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you get a big team behind you, all of a sudden you're at another level, isn't
Well,
it? And it's if you want that level, what that looks like,
Of
isn't
course,
it?
and I have no business acumen, so I don't really know how to piece that together.
Yeah.
And do you know what? Again, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I have to be happy in the now. I have to be happy with the school gig tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have to be happy wanting to come and see you today.
Keep it going, just got one more.
Yeah, I have to be happy coming to see you today. I have to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
What's one question you'd like to ask me before we say goodbye until next time? Because me and you could definitely sit here for another
I know.
2-3 hours, couldn't we? It's wonderful. I love asking you stuff.
What would be your best bit of advice for me?
For you?
Yeah. It's so weird asking you that.
So you rang me a number of years ago. I was outside Starbucks.
I was in the car, I remember.
You rang me and said, Luke, I'd like a word with you. I was like, no problem. What is it? And you talked about things you've talked about today, about the burnout, about the balance.
Yeah.
How do I, Luke, I've been working within something. Now it's on my own. Like what? And I remember that conversation, without going into the depth, it was around the balance. It was enjoying your life. It was the freedom. It was loving life while also earning a living too.
Yeah.
And you've conquered it because you just said there that you pick and choose some of the things that you do and don't do. You've got money in the bank. You're content. You love your golf. So you've got a real idea of what makes you happy.
Yeah.
So my advice to you would be to not get too obsessed with what other people think you should and shouldn't be doing. Follow what gives you that feeling, because you've chased that feeling for 25 years.
True.
And now you've got it. And sometimes that feeling's taken away because we listen to what other people think we should be striving for rather than what we want to strive for. And if that striving floats your boat and excites you, and you can still feel how you want to feel, then that's maybe the right thing for you. But if you're hearing all of this stuff of scale, do this, get a PR company, and you're thinking, not because of fear, but you're thinking, what am I prepared to pay for that? Am I prepared to miss the golf days? Am I prepared to travel all over the world and not have my space to see my brother, to see my dad? Because there's a lot of things that come with the next stage and the next level. You and I are slightly different in terms of that. Like, I just love it. I love it. I never, ever have felt the burnout because my freedom is this. My freedom is in doing it. I think I find challenge when I'm out of that because I've been in it so long, and there are things I've got to work on.
But I think I'm more intense than you.
Yeah.
I think I'm more of a No, I am. I think I'm conditioned. You're doing the same job in a much more relaxed way. I could learn a lot from you. I really could. I don't know if it's a teacher in me, it's a stressful job for many years.
Yeah.
Fucking hard job, man. So yeah, I think I think the vice principal in me as well was results driven. So because if you don't get results, you lose your job. So I think that's maybe another thing we haven't spoke about. But I think there's a lot of people losing their jobs, a lot of good people, because of this thing called pressure. And
I think that for you, it's something that you've had a lot of and you don't want any of.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about advice, I think you already have your answers in terms of what you need to do to feel how you want to feel. Because you're, like you say, very spiritual. You're about what you feel.
Yeah.
You feel happy and content. You've chased it for so long. Now you've got it. Embrace it. Enjoy it. Yeah. It doesn't always need to be what's next, does it?
Yeah. Well, that's why, because you're not in control of that anyway.
Yeah.
So when I say just be happy, honestly, what is more happy than waking up without any pain in your life or worry?
Yeah.
Calm.
Yeah. Beautiful feeling.
Because when you've had anxiety, and I've had it bad, anything other than that is a great day. So that's linking to gratitude. So if we're just going to summarise this nicely, parents, get your kids on writing things about gratitude. Every single week, write 5 things that you're grateful for. And that could be breathing.
Simple.
Because we're getting spoilt.
Yeah.
And this. Like what? Live in the now.
The last thing I want to leave us with today is, I know we've pressed for time, is this. And when you look at that, for those that are listening that won't see it, if you're not watching it on YouTube, you'll see my great friend Steve Sallis' book, Educating Football. Now, on the front cover, when you look at that, right, you maybe have been asked this before, when you look at that cover, tell me what you see and tell me what you feel.
Right, I see loyalty. I was meant to have Aidan O'Brien, the Irish international, come down. He got called for the England-Ireland squad on the Saturday. Brad Collins was at Barnsley. He's a Barnsley goalie. No one really knows him, but he's a legend. I texted him at 11 o'clock on the Saturday night and said, Brad, I'm in trouble. Can you book photos tomorrow? All the photography's booked. Can you get down? He was there at 6:30 at the Den.
Class.
Yes, world class. It's like a son. Next thing, I just see an old scraggly wall. We took about 8 million photos, and the last photo was taken was that outside the Millwall ground. You couldn't make it up. All the photos inside. I see a young man there that's now made his England debut. So yeah, I just see, I put the wanky suit on, sort of school teacherish look, but I just see pride, mate. Like, I wrote a book, like, it's freaking me out.
Yeah.
And it ain't a bad one either. Yeah. So yeah, and it's not about football. For anyone that hates football, it's about life. I just put football in the title to sell some copies, didn't I?
So it's interesting when you look at the cover of how it tells so many stories, doesn't it? Because when I look at that and knowing you, I look at that and I see the basic background in terms of the roof, the wall. Yeah. Because there is no thrills with you, is it? It is, you are that guy that literally, that is you. There's no pretend, I don't think anybody will meet you and then think, is that really him? You are that guy.
Hopefully.
Well, you are. You can't fake it for as long as I've known you, nearly a decade. So I see that and I think that I didn't know if that was done on purpose or it was just you. And
no, the last photo.
Yeah.
Tony, the photographer, just went, all right, come on, let's try in there, see if we can get one more in. And that was the one we used.
Mate, it's a wonderful story. Number one, you've got a wonderful story. Number two, mate, you're bringing so much joy to the world. It's uncomprehendable, and you do to my life too. And the third thing, I wish you all the very best in everything that you do. And I do hope that you go to a school and my children are in that classroom, because I would be really proud of you to work with my kids. That's how much you mean to me, and that's how much I watch you in admiration for all that you do and all that you've done. So from me to you, mate, I really appreciate you. I appreciate you making the 6-7 hour round trip to spend the day with me. You're a remarkable human being, and I think it's only just the beginning for you. So thank you so much.
Legend, mate. Thanks a lot. Love you.